looked at my dad, I'm sitting down, and I tapped him on the shoulder. He said, what? I said, I'm sitting down. And he's like, so what? I said, what's the rule in the gym? What happens in the thunderstorm? I said, it rains. He said, it doesn't stop raining. I said, yeah. He said, I want you to run across the ring and I want you to throw punches and don't stop. Any tournament he was at and I was at, it was like, oh, here we go. I go out there, I know nothing about Alexander Usyk, and he's got this funky hair. He's Ukrainian. I've never seen a Ukrainian before.
It's Malignaggi next. Does he get to you at all?
Early on, I was like, this kid ain't got a shot with me. As a boxer, I can truly say I did it all. Eddie's got this little smirk on him, and Eddie, I still don't like that smirk. I'm walking to the ring for Keith, and one thing that was told to me about walking to the ring, that I was being booed, and I leap in with the hook, and he comes here and right hand right down the middle, and I go down. I go down and I'm shook. Why you guys taking me there, huh?
Welcome to My Life in Boxing with me, Gareth Davies, and him, my wingman, Spencer the Omen Oliver. Well, in this show, My Life in Boxing, we talk to current boxers, ex-boxers, promoters, managers, ring announcers, characters from the world of boxing. This week, from across the pond, on a special visit, we have none other than two-time welterweight world champion and master of all things, I would like to say, the one and only Showtime Shawn Porter. Look at that beaming smile to start with. Yeah. How are you?
I tell everybody, I'm not a jack of all trades, I'm a king of all trades.
Well, there you go, I like it. Let's get straight into it, Shawn. What's your very first memory of boxing?
I got so many. I got so many stories. I'm a storyteller, so bear with. But the long story short, because people always ask, how did you get into boxing? I tell people all the time, usually in the States, it's your dad did it, or your grandfather did it, or you got an uncle that did it, or a cousin. Boxing in the States isn't a sport that you just grow up and you say, oh, I think I want to try that. It's usually a family member or someone close to you has taken you to the sport. In that case, it was my dad. And my mom and my dad were never together. They were separated. I would go and stay with my dad on the weekends. My mom would stop at Burger King or McDonald's or Taco Bell on the way to drop us off at with my dad, and would drop me off at the boxing gym. And I don't know if somebody said something to my dad, or if my dad, as I know my dad, I'm like, it probably was just him. He didn't like us coming into the gym with food. And he didn't like us sitting down at the gym. My dad came in one day, and I'll never forget this. I'm 5 years old. Came into the gym, got the food, we got our spot, and he says, put it down. Put it down, and he says, shows us how to wrap our hands, and he says, you're never coming in here with food anymore. He said, the number one rule is you can't sit down.
Let me ask about Dad Kenny. He's obviously instrumental in who you've become. Absolutely. You're his DNA for a start.
Absolutely.
Was he the disciplinarian in your life? Was he the guy that delivered to you what you were going to be later on?
Oh yeah, absolutely. My mom and my dad. My mom pretty much just kind of gave me the guidance of, this is what I believe your life should be like. And then my dad gave me, this is what your life is gonna be, you know? And I really just, honestly, I think I figured it out along the way, not really understanding it, but to your question, like as I analyze that now, I'm like, yeah, someone telling me this is what your life should be, and someone telling me this is what your life is gonna be, and I just kind of mixed the two, you know?
I mean, your father introduced you to boxing, but how important was he in those early stages?
He was everything. You know, listen, I'm probably 30 years old. Mm-hmm. We're at the gym, and this is before I had mentioned it to my dad. I walked into the gym one day and I was just like, I'm sitting down. That's how long it had been that my dad created that rule, that creed. You don't sit down in the gym. I would go to the gym, I wouldn't sit down, I wouldn't talk to anybody. I hated waiting on guys to spar because they were always, you know, just kind of talking and lingering around. And I'm like,
working.
Get to work, you know? Yeah. I went to the gym one day and I looked at my dad, I'm sitting down, and I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, look. He said, what? I said, look at me. He said, what? I said, I'm sitting down. And he's like, so what? I said, what's the rule in the gym? And he laughed. He laughed, and then he goes around the gym telling everybody, because he realized, like, I imparted that rule so long ago and didn't even realize that so much of what I had given you, I had held on to.
What are the memories of watching boxing at a very early age?
Just like what you just said, my dad, very hard. My dad, when he started training me, we being myself and my brothers, we were younger. So we weren't competing, but my dad was trying to compete himself while trying to train other guys and train me as well. And I'll never forget, he had a fighter who was probably about 10 years older than us. And this kid goes on to the Nationals to win the tournament. My dad wasn't able to go to the Nationals with them.
The NABFs, yeah?
Yeah, it was one.
Golden Gloves.
There it is. There it is. And the kid comes back, and other trainers in the gym were trying to, start training this kid. And my dad would go to the gym, and he's like basically fending off other people from training this kid. And just the intensity that my dad always had, that's something that I have always seen from my dad. And the intensity that people would see on fight night between he and I and things of that nature. I grew up seeing that.
That's fascinating because it kind of takes us very neatly on your relationship with your father into your amateur career.
Yeah.
So he gives you the foundations, the coaching. You develop this system where obviously you're still a small boy and his son.
Yeah.
But he's coach when he's coach. I don't know if he cuddles you ever, but he cuddles you when he's dad.
He cuddled me.
No,
Have you seen my dad before?
You've never had a cuddle.
No. My dad, and I would be representing him. I would not be representing him well if I didn't say this, but my dad kissed me every day.
There you go.
My dad told me he loved me every day.
Your amateur career, how does it start? How does it progress?
People ask me all the time, when did you develop this aggressive style of boxing? And I really do think that it started before my first fight because my dad is an aggressive guy. So that aggression is just a part of my nature due to my dad. But the very first fight we had, I'll take you guys through it quickly. 8 years old, 65 pounds, and we're doing 60 seconds, 3 60-second rounds. And because I had grown up doing this, I was very conventional. I had a nice little 1-2, and the kid just comes out and he's welling every round. And I'm like, get space, jab, but then he's on me. I get space, 1-2, and then he's on me. The last round, my dad said, he said, what happens in the thunderstorm? I said, it rains. He said, it doesn't stop raining. I said, yeah. He said, I want you to run across the ring and I want you to throw punches and don't stop. I ran across the ring, threw the punches, I didn't stop, and I ended up winning the fight. And it kind of became our thing. We would box really good for 2 rounds, and then we would run across the ring that last round, and I carried that on throughout my career, and that just kind of became who I am.
You win the Golden Gloves of the United States Nationals in 2007. You're 19, I think. About 19 then.
Yeah.
19, 20.
Yeah.
But during this career, you mentioned Alexander Usyk there. We need to go over this in detail. So what weight are you? This is the guy that is now considered the #1 heavyweight of the era.
Yeah.
You're boxing Alexander Usyk, Russia against the Ukraine versus the United States.
Right.
Did you know anything about this guy? Talk us through the whole thing. What was he like at the time? Was he a slip of a thing?
And I'll go back just a little bit because there's another name that that kind of, he haunted me and I haunted him through our amateur days. That's Daniel Jacobs.
Okay, Danny Jacobs. Again, the super middleweight.
First time we fought, we were 14 years old fighting at welterweight, And we ended up in the same division as adults as well. Any tournament he was at and I was at, it was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
If I went to a tournament and I did not see his name, I'm like, oh, it's all day and all night. And he would tell me this. He said, all right, man, I hated seeing your name in my bracket. We knew. We were always, whoever won the fight between he and I would win the tournament.
But he must have brought the animal out in you.
Brought the animal out every time.
But this guy we're talking about is the heavyweight champion. He beat the Giants.
So in 2007, at the Olympic trials, I ended up losing to Daniel Jacobs.
Right.
Daniel Jacobs fought me twice in the trials, and so he's worn down, and he ends up losing to respectfully, a nobody. And I just respectfully, a nobody, and he goes on and turns pro. And so they call us up and they say, hey, Daniel Jacobs has turned pro. Do you want to replace him as an alternate for the team? You might have a chance to compete in the games. And I'm like, This is a dream of mine, so I'm staying amateur. And because I stayed amateur, I actually end up in a duel between USA and the Ukraine. 2007, they came over to the US, Chicago. Keith Thurman was on that team as well.
Wow.
So Keith, what's the division below 75 kilos?
Super middleweight.
Super welter.
Oh, super welter,
Yeah.
sorry.
So he was super
kilos.
welter, and then I was middleweight. I was fighting at 75 kilos, about 5'6" on a great day. I'm 5'7" ish.
Yeah.
You know, and Ukraine comes over, and it's loss after loss after loss. I'm in the back room with Keith. We're in the locker room, and everybody's coming back like, oh, we lost another one. We lost another one. Keith looks at me, and he says, I'm not losing. I looked at him. I'm not losing either. Keith goes out there, and he wins. We got one win on the night, and it was Keith right before me. I was like, he won. I got to win, you know? I go out there. I know nothing about Alexander Usyk, and he's got this funky hair. He's Ukrainian. I've never seen a Ukrainian before. He's a tall, slender southpaw. And it was just a straight up boxing match. I mean, he's in and out, I'm in and out. You don't see the aggression that you saw from me as a pro. You don't see that style just yet, because the amateurs is about, you got to keep up a pace. You got to
score.
You got to outpoint your guy.
You got to hit and not be hit. You got that in and out. It's all about foot movement, right?
And so every round, they're giving a score after the round, and I'm like either up by 1 or I'm down by 1 after 1 and 2 rounds. You know, going into the last round, I think I might have been up by 1 point. And the other coach that was in my corner, he said, if you catch him with a good right hand, you'll get him. And just by luck, man, I don't know what it was, but we're boxing the same thing. And I was very, very powerful at 165 pounds. I hit that kid with a right hand, and he stumbled back a little bit. Then comes the ferocious beast to end the fight. I think I might have beat Usyk by 1 or 2 points, maybe 2 points. Great fight.
Can I just ask you what that means to you now, to be able to say that in your life in boxing, that you beat, I know it's in the amateurs, but you beat a guy in Alexander Usyk, who's a national hero because of things that have gone on. He's in his late 30s like you now. You're similar age.
I know
what it means to you in your career to have beaten him.
We'll get to my pro career and all that kind of stuff. The number one thing that people say to me around the U.S., and they've even said it to me over here while I've been here, you fought everybody. And when I can even look back on my amateur career and talk about the names I fought as an amateur, as a boxer, I can truly say I did it all.
Let me finally ask you on the amateurs, how disappointing for you was it? Usyk won Olympic gold.
Yeah.
I wonder if Vasyl Lomachenko was on that team you're talking about as well.
Yep.
He was on that team. He won it twice.
Yep.
How disappointing is it for you, someone that obviously marked your career all the way through, winning all the notches like Spencer done, all the amateur kind of, you know, all the amateur stuff, then you move on to the pros and you work your way through local, national, regional, European, not to go to the Olympics?
I identified what the separation was between the U.S. and all of these other countries that win medals. The U.S. fighters are so focused on becoming professionals and making money. And I, for whatever reason, at 19, 20 years old, I understood I got to win a medal. And that was my thing. It didn't have to be a gold medal. It didn't have to be a silver. But
launch pad.
Didn't matter what it was. It wasn't even about the launch pad. It was about what it used to be. Used to be going to the Olympic Games to win medals because that was important, representing your country.
Right.
And that was what disappointed me. A guy that I had beat twice got an opportunity to fight in the Olympic Games, didn't care about winning a medal. And I knew he didn't care as much as I did.
Okay, let's talk about the pro career then. An amazing career. I'll bring up the 4 losses in a minute. I know that everything else of it.
You don't have to do that.
You know we're going to get to that.
We are going to get to it. And it was your very last fight, and it was the one and only Terence Crawford, who is arguably the #1 pound for pound. And you could make an argument then he was #1.
Yeah.
But you have your first, I had a look on the record earlier, first 17, 18 fights were in little arenas, Mississippi, all around America.
Yeah.
Until you moved into NABF and challenging then for a world title. But the first 18, 19 fights, you were in regional battles. Talk to us about that period. Who was promoting you then? Who was managing you then?
It's promoters that aren't around anymore. Prize Fight. That's who we signed with. My favorite part about boxing is the relationships you make. You know, Gareth, I was able to text you, and I didn't even know I'd be seeing you today, but just to have the ability to be able to reach out to you and tell you that I'm in your city and things of that nature. My favorite part of the sport is the relationships.
Community. Yeah,
and we
trust, friendships.
We made a lot of relationships in the amateurs. So when it was time to turn pro, my dad was taking on the managerial role for me. And being new in that space, my dad did what he always does. He's just gathering information. And we found Prize Fight. Prize Fight found us. And it was a really good relationship early on. For me, my pro career was quite a blur. Because I'll be honest with you, I played American football in high school. Love football straight up and down. You can't get me off of the TV when the Super Bowl's on.
You're a running back.
I was a running back. I was never left the field.
Boom.
I was everything. I had natural hands. I could catch.
If you'd been 30 pounds heavier, would you have played NFL?
Listen, I was waiting on a growth spurt till I was about 25, 26.
Really, you'd have done it.
And I finally let it go. If at some point, some way, somehow, I had got to 5'9", 5'10", I was going to try to do it.
You're thinking at a young age, you're like a welterweight at like 14 years of age, and you turn professional, you're still that weight. You think at some point it's got to happen. But listen, I want to talk to you about your pro career. You win your first 16 fights, 11 of those by stoppage. You win your first title, the NABF title at welterweight, a title that was vacated by Canelo Alvarez. Talk to us a little bit about that. And did you ever think that did you ever think that fight was ever going to materialize?
That fight with Canelo, no. I mean, even when I first won the tournament, the title, I remember it going from a few different hands. I don't remember it being vacated from Canelo, but at that point, to what I was saying, my career was a blur. The first half of my career was probably even first 2/3 of my career was a blur, because me turning pro was simply wanting to make money and have more than I had when I growing up. And we weren't in the slums or anything like that. How am I gonna make money? And it was like boxing's the ticket. And so growing up, I didn't watch boxing. I wasn't studious to the sport. I didn't know who a lot of these guys were. I truly didn't even understand what an IBF title was when I won it,
So let's just talk about that transition then into world level.
Yeah.
So Julio Diaz is a draw. Talk to us about that fight, and then you go on.
Yeah. I think I fought Alfonso Gomez right before I fought Julio Diaz. And I only knew Alfonso because of the contender. A lot of these guys, I didn't study these guys, and I didn't truly know who they were. And I honestly think that was immature, but it also worked to my advantage, because where a lot of guys might find anxiety in learning who someone is and what they've done, I was oblivious to all.
You were making it about you, weren't you?
I was making
because you were confident about yourself. You knew what you could do.
That's all
you
it
knew
was.
You were shorter, but you had the power.
Yeah, that's all it was.
Shawn, how did you decide what weight you was going to be? Because you jumped through the weights. I'm looking through your professional career, and you're down at sort of welterweight. You go to super welterweight. You go to middle. You go to light middle. Super middle. Sorry.
I turned pro. And right before I turned pro, my dad and I were talking. I said, middleweight. My dad's like, "You're not gonna be a middleweight." I said,
"Harsh but true."
I'm not, And because 65, I was 165 pounds, 75 kilos, and everything was making sense. And I was so much stronger than guys and faster than guys. But my dad understood they're gonna come to the ring at 180 pounds, 190 pounds, and you're still gonna be 165, 170. It doesn't make sense. We moved down to 160. And once we got to 160, I think my dad saw how easy it was for me to get to 60. And he said, well, we'll go to
pros.
4. Yeah. We'll even the playing field even more.
Yeah.
And we were campaigning at 154, and we end up at a Showtime fight. I'll never forget this. We end up at a Showtime fight. I fought on Showtime. I won. They do some little like after party deal, and somebody with a network is talking to my dad and tells my dad, if you can get him to 147 pounds, if you can get him to welterweight, he'll be a star. And that thing, it was like a seed that was planted in my dad's head. He gets fixated on getting me to 147 pounds. I get fixated on what my dad wants from me, you know, being a son, you never want to let the dad down and all those things. My dad said, we'll just see if we can do it.
How tough was it?
I accepted the challenge. And it wasn't tough, I think, mentally, because I was so tough mentally. I accepted the challenge and I did it. And after I did it, I kind of said, oh, like, what happens now? And we start making the weight at 47, and it happens. And I'm able to make the weight.
Show in your face almost when you made 147.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that 147 journey then, the journey that's defined you as a professional boxer.
Yeah.
Devon Alexander, winning the belt.
Yeah.
IBF, I think it was.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that, what it meant to become a world champion, Shawn.
And like you said, I was making it all about me. So I didn't understand that the title. I didn't understand being a world title and world champion and all those things.
Really?
I truly did not. And people look at me like, how is that possible? I grew up doing this, okay? I went to the gym at 5 years old wanting to sit there and play a video game, wanting to sit there and eat. And my dad's like, wrap up, you're training. And so my thing was, whenever I wasn't doing it, I wanted to be as far away from it as possible. We would go to a fight party and I'd be in the other room on a little DJ mixing thing. And my dad would say, come watch the fight. I'd be in the other room, you know, with cousins and things like that. My dad said, come watch the fight. I just wanted to be away from it.
Was it like doing homework for you in a way then?
That's all it was. It was like
Really?
doing homework.
Wow.
Let me get it out of the way so I can go have some fun.
You get a name next, because he is a name, because Mouthy Malignaggi, he's talking all the time. He's a great personality. We've all worked with him in his career and outside his career. He's famous here because of people like Ricky Hatton and Amir Khan, these fights. So it's Malignaggi next. Does he get to you at all? Does he obviously, you stop him in the 4th round, but does he get to you in the build-up?
He got to me. Because again, I was facing the doubters, not knowing who I was and feeling like, you know, he was going to, people actually thought that he was going to outbox me. And people didn't understand, like, in my mind, you don't see this. You see a lot of aggression and a lot of power and stuff like that. In my mind, I'm a boxer before I'm a puncher. You know, I really did. You know, you get a lot of guys say that they're a boxer puncher. In my mind, I truly was a boxer puncher. And I think I actually went on to show that later in my career. But early on, I was like, this kid ain't got a shot with me. And I cut him with the very first punch that I threw. It was a jab. It cut him. And I smelled blood after that. It was a wrap. You know?
Listen, you come through that one.
Yeah.
And you move on to someone that we know very well.
Yeah.
In Special K, KELL BROOK.
Yeah.
He comes over to challenge you in America. I mean, talk to us about that one. Was you surprised by KELL's performance? Did you expect him to be as tough as he was? Because it was a really grueling contest. Had you even heard of him at that time?
KELL grew me up. Before KELL, I didn't study my guys. And it kind of didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was if I'm 100% and I'm doing my thing, you can't stop me. And KELL was also terrible timing for me. I had come off of a great win against Devon Alexander. I had overpowered him and I had pressured him. And then everybody saw I diminished Paulie Malignaggi. And I began to believe that the power that I had at 165 pounds at middleweight, I got my power back at welterweight, and I'm unstoppable now. And for 12 straight rounds, I go at KELL the exact same way, every single round. And he was stronger than I thought he was going to be. The thing that was said to us was that he hadn't won a championship title. I think he might have had like 30 fights at that point.
Yeah, he was undefeated.
Yeah.
He'd been around a long time.
He was like 30 or 31-0.
Yeah.
And literally, that was what was told to me. He hasn't won
32-0.
He hasn't won a championship in 32 fights. He ain't never gonna win one. It doesn't start tonight. And so I wasn't prepared for KELL BROOK.
In fairness to you, and I think you might agree with me on this, I think it was KELL's finest performance. He was brilliant in the mid-range.
It might have been.
Brilliant in the mid-range. It was a majority decision for him.
Yeah.
Let's add into this, it was a very, very close fight.
It was.
It was a great fight.
And it was a brilliant fight. I remember covering it myself. In Carson City, StubHub Centre.
Yeah.
An amazing night. And you could see what it meant to them when they celebrated. They went ballistic, didn't
hurt.
they?
I think
that hurt.
How did it hurt? How much did it hurt?
I didn't know Eddie Hearn, right? So Eddie is this big, tall guy, and Eddie's got this little smirk on him, and Eddie, I still don't like that smirk because that's all I saw, you know? Like, I didn't know KELL, I didn't know his team, and then Eddie will move around with this confidence that kind of like, you're not supposed to feel this good. You're not supposed to feel this way, and I'm gonna take it away from you. And oh boy, when they jumped up and down, when they won that fight, that really hurt.
It's one of the greatest victories by a Briton abroad.
absolutely.
That we always regard it as that. Oh yeah, in
Really?
the top 5 great. You looked Listen, you weren't wrong to think you were invincible at that point and unstoppable.
Yeah.
He was an underdog against you.
Yeah.
We didn't believe he was going to do it.
Yeah, wow.
So it was. We classify it as one of the top 5 victories by a Brit abroad ever. Lloyd Honeyghan and Donald Curry. Tyson Fury against Vladimir Klitschko in Germany. Absolutely, we do.
Well, I think that, you know, you say he was 31, 32 fights, unbeaten going into that one, but he didn't know where he was at in his career because he'd never competed at that level. So it was very much a coming-of-age fight for him.
Very much.
And it was unknown for us. You was proven at that time.
Yeah.
So we was going, when he come over to you, the Brits thought he's a huge underdog going to America in your backyard to win a world title. So that was a massive scalp, you know, for
Listen,
for him.
and to the point of timing, because I'm fighting in LA, because I'm fighting at home, if I mess around and just get a decision because I'm at home, there's no telling what happens to my career. The trajectory that I would have been on after a KELL Brook win doesn't take me towards a Keith Thurman. Or it probably would have took me towards Keith, but it sure as heck wouldn't have took me towards Earl Spence Jr.
Yeah.
You then go into a fight with Keith Thurman.
Yeah.
Which, again, I'm sorry to bring it up, but it was a huge high-profile fight at the time. I remember being there.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out your way.
So it was like another step. You know, I left the KELL Brook fight. I'm never gonna fight the same way for 12 rounds ever again. If something's not working, I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm going to make the adjustment. I'm walking to the ring for Keith. And one thing that was told to me about walking to the ring, that I was being booed. I didn't hear the boos. I didn't hear the boos because mentally I was telling myself, be ready to make the adjustments. Be ready to do this. Be ready to do that. And I mean, I was firing, y'all. Y'all saw the fight. I was firing on every single cylinder, every single round. But I was getting greedy in moments, round after round. And I think that, obviously, we saw that I lost the fight. I think that there were just big moments that he would have in certain rounds that swung the round for him. And, you know, that's how that one ended up going for me.
Fight of the year, Barclays Centre, million in pay-per-view sales. It was a really big event. Again, in your defence, I'm not just saying it because you're here, I think that was his finest performance.
I do too.
Is that fair?
That had to have been
You
his
got the
finest
best out of him.
Absolutely.
Like you got the best out of KELL Brook.
Absolutely.
And where you've gone from walking back to that dressing room after your first defeat, going, right, this is what I need to do. Now you're overthinking maybe and thinking, going the other way, going the opposite way, you're going all out, firing on all cylinders, and there's no real thought process about what you're doing. And like you say, you put yourself in those positions, you're in the pocket too much, you're doing stuff that maybe... So, yeah, it's crazy because at that stage of your career, after everything that you've been through the amateurs, through the pros, winning world titles, etc., you're still learning, you're still adapting at that late stage.
And let me add to that. So I want to ask what your feeling is after that. But after that, you win 3, then you get a chance for the WBC title against Danny Garcia, isn't it? What did you feel after that defeat?
A lot of people see my reaction. They have both of us on the TV screen. And they call him as the winner. He's jumping up and down a little bit. And then you hear me scream, I wanted that. A lot of people misinterpret that. They think that I'm saying I wanted his belt. I wanted his O. I wanted to be the first one to beat.
You wanted the soul.
And yeah. And so that for me is kind of what hurt. It was like, I knew I was going to beat this dude. And I wanted to be the one to beat him, you know? There was so much hype about that fight. He and I both were known as like, powerful juggernauts and, all those sorts of things. And, he ended up winning the fight. And I really don't remember my feeling going back to the room after that fight. After the fight, they announced him as the winner, and then I hear all of the boos. And I mean, the boos are around the arena. It's not a half of the stadium. I mean, the whole room is booing, and I think that was what comforted me.
Okay, that's interesting.
And brought me away from the crying.
So you're heartbroken the first time in defeat, but not heartbroken in the same way the second time.
Yeah, it was weird. It was like, as my name isn't called and I start to come down, it's like the boos picking me back up, And it was like kind of the validation.
So you go into the WBC title fight, welterweight fight with Danny Garcia, Swifty.
Yeah.
Fantastic hands.
Yeah.
Great fighter, very dangerous.
Yeah.
Explosive power. We saw it against Amir Khan.
Let me tell you guys how special that fight was. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, go.
That's how special this fight was for me. I won the IBF, I lost the IBF, and I'm still kind of in this blur of what is professional boxing, and I go to the WBC convention in 2014, and if you've never been to a WBC convention, they tell you what the WBC is. They lay it out on a couple of platters every single day for you. And
there's a who's who there, all the way back to
and on top of that, there's the who's there, right?
And the who's there, yeah.
Exactly. So I'm really beginning to understand what this professional boxing thing is and what these world championship titles are. They have a night where they have all of the champions on the stage, and I'm sitting there. I don't go up because I'm not a world champion. I'm not a WBC champion. I don't deserve to be up there. And this is when Mauricio Sr. was still alive. And
Jose.
I'm sorry, Jose.
Jose, yeah.
Jose is still alive, and he tells them to tell me to go on the stage. Nice. They come over and tell me, and I said, I'm not going up there. And they said, no, you got to go up there. You deserve to be up there. And I said, I don't deserve to be up there. I haven't won the WBC title.
Yeah.
And Holyfield's up there. Marvelous Marvin Hagler, my favorite fighters up there. I mean, everybody's up there.
Roberto Duran was up there, was he?
Everybody.
He's always there.
I mean, the 60 of the who's of boxing were up there.
But you're a former world champion, IBF.
So you belong.
But yeah, you belong. But you feel because you're not WBC champion, you don't belong.
I didn't belong up there. So I'm up there, and I get in the back, and my hands are in my pocket, and I'm like, I don't feel comfortable. I don't want to be up here. And while I'm up there, I say to myself, next time I come to a convention, I'm coming as a WBC champion. I'm never coming, because I don't want to be here, standing here, and I don't deserve to be here. So at that moment, I make it my job to win the WBC title. Took 4 years to do it.
16-12, 15-13 twice, still a close fight, but you outboxed, I say, a guy who, dangerous with both hands, his hooks were incredibly difficult, but you outboxed him.
Yeah.
And you used your power, so it must have been very satisfying.
Absolutely, very satisfying. We brought in Barry Hunter. First time we had actually X's and O's and game plan for a fight. Before that, it was just go in there and be you, and there's nothing that your opponent can do about it if you're doing what my dad would always say, if you're doing what I tell you to do, you're gonna win, We actually X's and O's this one. Game plan, and it worked to a T. We knew early on that he was going to try to counter punch with that hook. Counter the counter, make the counter puncher be first, make him uncomfortable, and that's what we did. And then surely around 7 or 8 rounds, we start trying to amp it up and be more aggressive. And all the credit to him. He was much tougher than I knew he was going to be, and it was a great fight. Remember, I told you guys, when I won the IBF, it was like this numb, in the blur kind of feeling. People have asked me, what's it feel like to win the WBC title? And I told people when I won that title, it felt like when I had my son. I had my son in 2018 as well. And I remember when my son came out, there was just this feeling that came over me. It's, wow, he's here.
Yep.
And they
joy, maybe. Joy?
Yeah.
Fulfillment?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They get in the ring and they're kind of whispering, Shawn won. We saw the cards. Shawn won the fight. And so, kind of the whisper in the corner is you won. And I didn't believe. I was like, I got to hear this. And when I heard my name, it was just like I had that exact same feeling as when my baby was born.
you were at a place where you could then go on and fight Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, and it really was Showtime Porter at this time. At this point,
Yeah.
you're the Showtime guy now.
Yep.
And the clothes come in.
Yeah.
Did you start DJing then as well?
No.
Did you start? Did you? Everything changed about. In my view, something about you changed because you could almost enjoy it and go,
It was
"I'm
just
here.
timing.
I'm here."
Yeah, it was just the timing. You know, when it came to Errol Spence, and Errol Spence is the boogeyman of the division and all that kind of stuff. I said, just get a belt. You get a belt, and we'll fight. I came here to Sheffield when he fought, and he ends up knocking down KELL, and I was like, wow, he's doing it. Then the fight gets waved off. I stood up, put my hands in my pocket. I said, all right, whenever they say go time, it's go time. Again, I'm being doubted. It's kind of like, that's like a part of my life. And that's why, you know, I thrive the way that I do, because I'm so used to being counted out and things of that nature. People are literally saying he's gonna knock me out. And then there comes the discussion of whether or not the fight's gonna be on pay-per-view or regular television. And word gets back to us, he's refusing to fight on regular television. I'm a pay-per-view fighter now, is what he's saying. And what's also being said is, can you guys sell a pay-per-view? And I felt like we could do it. We end up in a press conference, and he basically tells me, you're not a pay-per-view fighter, I'm the pay-per-view fighter. You're not bringing fans to the fight, I'm bringing fans to the fight. And by this point, I had been on Fox. I had been going out to LA. I had been meeting superstars, Shaquille O'Neal, and the list goes on, Martin Lawrence. I mean, the list goes on. And I was literally like, all right, you think I can't sell, huh? So it was train by day, and it was contact the superstar by night and make sure that they were at the fight.
Brilliant.
And I said, I actually thought that this was gonna be my last fight.
Terence Crawford.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, he's considered probably, you could argue he's pound for pound number one. Did you know it was your last fight? Talk us through it, and how good is this guy?
I knew that Errol Spence was my last fight. And we did the post-fight conference. After that, I know that it's my last fight, and I'm kind of like, how do I, you know, approach my dad and tell him that, you know, I want to retire? And I'm in my room and, you know, just meditating, and I was praying, and I felt my spirit tell me that that's not it. And there's something else. And a day or two later after that, Errol Spence gets into a car accident.
Oh, that's terrible.
Errol Spence gets into a car accident. It's a couple of days after I had been thinking about, you know, how I'm going to tell my dad that, you know, I want to retire. And the accident was horrific, and a couple of days of making sure that he's okay and everything. And the boxing world moves on. And they start to say, well, we're not going to get Errol Spence and Terence Crawford anymore. I think I want to see Terence Crawford and Shawn Porter. And there it is. My spirit's telling me that it's got to be Terence. And then after Terence, you're done.
But did you feel at that stage, though, like you said there, you're talking about retirement and whatnot, and I think once a fighter's talking about retirement, the fight's really left them. The dog's left them a little bit, because once that seed of doubt starts creeping in, you know, should I be retiring? I think it's time now.
Yeah.
Your mindset's different going into that fight then. So, you know, what was the thought process behind that one?
I'll tell you another one. I was at home watching the fight, and and while I'm watching the fight, I had a fight party. Everybody's behind me. I'm sitting down on the...
You're watching it back?
No. I was just watching a fight.
A fight.
Okay.
This is after Errol and all that, but this is before Terence.
Yeah.
I'm just at home watching the fight, and I'm literally thinking to myself while I'm watching the fight, ooh, that looks like it hurts. And I shook it off. I was like, what are you doing?
You've been fighting for 30 years.
And I thought to myself, I'm starting to think like this. It's about time for this thing to be over.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like, when you're not thinking about it, instinctively it just happens. You go in there and do it. But once them seeds of doubt creep in, and you go, like I do it now when we're at ringside and you're commentating, you see these wars and you think,
brutal, yeah.
Really? Well, I went through that. But we did go through it. And once the mind changes like that, it's time to get out.
There's certain things that we just cannot be conscious of. We can't be conscious of getting hurt.
Sure.
We can't be conscious of losing. We can't be conscious of some of the worst things that could happen. We all know what can happen in the ring, but we can't be conscious to it.
Let's just talk about the fight finally in this section.
Because he is that good. You asked me that. He is that good.
Yeah. And obviously, it looks like he's going to step up to middle, virtually super middle, or super middle, to fight Saul Canelo Alvarez. And we're all giving him a good opportunity in that fight as well. I want to get your view on that today. It was a tough fight, but boy, it was a great fight while it lasted. You drew the dog out in him on that night, didn't you?
I kind of reverted back to
the animal.
Well, not just the animal, but kind of the KELL BROOK of continuing to do the same thing round after round. And the other thing is, I could see him turning it up. And the more he turned it up, man, it was like I wanted to go there, but I couldn't go there.
Because he's in second gear and you're in fifth gear and you're going there and then he's coming through the gears and you're going, I've got no more gears to go.
I start at fourth or fifth gear, and that's kind of where I'm in. And so I'm not used to guys like getting there. And I could see him like literally round after round doing this. And that moment where I get put down, I'm like out of my mind. I'm like, just go for it. And I like
you've never been stopped
for no reason.
You've never been stopped,
and for no reason, I just leap in with the hook. And perfect timing for that kid. He's got great boxer eyes, you know. He saw it, and I leap in with the hook, and he comes here and right hand right down the middle, and I go down. I go down, and I'm shook. And I'm shook because I kind of was in the daze already. I made a conscious decision to throw that punch. And you know how it is.
Yeah.
A lot of what we do is just so
instinctive. Just instinctive. Bam.
I got conscious and made up and just did something.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out.
Desperation.
Desperation.
Well, I think it's daring to be great. You get to a stage of the fight where you go, I've got to roll the dice now, throw everything and the kitchen sink because I recognise it's not going my way, and I'm gonna get. It's in your head. You go, I'm gonna get beat.
It was in my head.
I've got to dare to be great. Yeah. And you took the opportunity. That's a mark of a great fighter, by the way, because other fighters would choose a different way out there.
Well,
you know,
he knocked me down.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is other fighters would go defensive.
But when I get up, I'm shook because I could hear the crowd, and this is one of the few times the crowd ain't on my side, and you know, it was a lot. It was a lot, and we go back to fighting again, and it was like I went from being conscious and making a mistake to now being conscious and not wanting to make a mistake, and I got apprehensive, I got hesitant, and he caught me again, and when I went down the second time, I'm like, I'm down. What am I doing? And I got mad, and you know, people are, you know, they always talk about me hitting the canvas, and I was emotional at that point.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. It was bad, man.
You knew you were at the end.
Yeah, it was a bad moment for me. And then I get up, and my dad is on the apron, and so I know what that means, and I'm like, I know what it means, but I'm confused, and it just was a lot. Why are you guys taking me there? Huh?
Well, let's ride over it. How good was Terence Crawford in your view? How good is he? Can he beat Canelo when we hope they fight later this year? And why didn't you ever fight Amir Khan?
Question number one. He's as good as you think he is, and I'll tell you what separates him from everybody else. He already has it physically. He puts in the work. He's got all that. He has the added component of being the strongest and courageous man that I've ever been in the ring with, that I've ever met, that I've ever seen. He's the most competitive man that I know, and that's gonna take him everywhere. I do believe that he can beat a Canelo Alvarez. I think that this is perfect timing for both of them. Canelo does not have another big name to fight. It's truly Terence Crawford, or who are you gonna fight? You know, they're gonna come because it's you, but they're not gonna come. They don't want to see you in the ring with anybody but Terence Crawford or the other big name.
It's a super fight that matches the best heavyweights fighting each other, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Definitely.
It's one of the biggest fights on earth.
And then it's perfect timing for Terence because, again, he doesn't really have another big name out there either, but he's fighting a Canelo Alvarez that's been around that block so many times, you know? I always refer to the analogy of car crashes. It's whether we like it or not. This is what their car crashes every single fight that we have. Canelo has been in enough car crashes, enough wear and tear, that he might actually break down through the course of 8 to 10 rounds, and it could become Terrence's fight.
And what about Amir? You went that whole journey on the same arc.
Yeah.
Why did that never happen?
We were together on Friday night. And, you know, a lot of times I try to stay away from conversations like that, but we ended up joking around. And he said that fight was mentioned to him. That fight was never mentioned to me. We were going down that path of the WBC, and Mr. Heyman knew what I wanted. And, you know, I told somebody this the other day, you don't see PBC fighters fight often, and it's because Mr. Heyman is always trying to position them to be in the biggest fight, making the most money. And unfortunately, a lot of times that causes for them to, you know, be out of the ring. But
you told him on Friday night that he ducked you the whole of his career.
I did not tell him that. But I honestly, I think that his speed would have been a problem.
For a guy that never showed a lot of interest in it growing up, you suddenly find yourself on broadcasts on TV. Tell us about that. How did that come about?
I've always wanted to be in broadcast. And so I refer back to NFL real quick. That's what I watched, and that's what I listened to. And so I remember watching, when I did watch boxing, and I listened to the commentary, they were always one-sided, and I hated it. And so when I got old enough to realize, like, I can do that, I'm gonna do that, and when I do it, I'm never gonna be one-sided. I'm never gonna let anybody tell me, talk about this guy, but don't talk about that guy.
Not content, though.
Yeah.
With just TV, you do your own podcast.
Yeah.
How much fun is that you've got canonical ownership of your own broadcast?
I love that because, you know, like yesterday we did a podcast show, and you guys are formatted.
The Porter podcast.
The Porter podcast. You guys probably been formatted for a couple of days now with this one. We figure out what we're going to talk about 2 hours before we go on.
What's your favorite broadcast and your favorite podcast that you've done, if you've got one?
They did the merger between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury.
The LA one.
They brought in, the LA one. Because that was Vegas. They did Vegas twice.
They did Vegas twice.
So the first one I think was Showtime.
Yes.
And then the next two were Fox and ESPN.
Yeah.
They did half Fox broadcast, half ESPN, brought us all together. I got to work with Max Kellerman. I got to work with Andre Ward.
Boxing is so often about narrative, about transformation, about inspiration, about growing. And it's been amazing to hear your journey, your life in boxing today, Shawn.
Thank you.
Brilliant for us, and an absolute pleasure to have you in the studio.
I'm telling you, this has made my trip.
Thank you, man.
I'll be back.
You've been watching My Life in Boxing, and that was Showtime Shawn Porter. What an amazing life he has and has had in boxing. Spencer and myself will be back next time. You've been watching My Life in Boxing.